Good evening. For our first news summary, we film of events in Dorset and Hampshire, and news of a parent strike in Cornwall, the spread of influenza in the West Country, and the friendly invasion of West Country ports by NATO warships.
Good evening. There are more reports today of influenza in the West Country. The spread of the illness has caused the cancellation of a football match in Devon. The Newton Abbot Spurs club have had to abandon their game today against Standard Telephones of Paynton.
A big row has blown up over the decision of Newton Abbot Urban Council to appoint a member of the council, Mr. Leonard Lamb, as their housing manager.
In 1946, Porthleven held its first gala week. The object? To raise money for improving the amenities of the town.
For a report on the situation, here's John Tanton.
Well, Mr. Lamb's appointment was announced on Monday, and it came as a surprise for a number of reasons.
But before that, over to the South West at 6 news desk and Joe Pengelly.
Still, the protests go on over Dr. Beeching's proposals for the railways. Most of them are still coming from southwest holiday towns, which face losing their railway service. But a threat to industry was also mentioned today. Devon's Industrial Development Officer, Mr. Hollis, said his first impression was that the cutting of the services in North Devon may hold back industrial development there considerably.
Now here's a fascinating piece of information. It took 20 men to fit a pane of glass into a window of a new house in Torquay today. Well, that's not surprising, because the pane was 17 feet long and 7 feet wide, half an inch thick, and weighed nearly half a ton. And it's the biggest pane ever to be fitted to a house in the West Country. It cost £40, but it should be worth it, because the house has a magnificent view of Tor Bay.
Well, fancy that. A beatnik problem for the Isles of Scilly. Lately, in the last few months, more and more of them have been making the island their base. Now the islanders are worried by the effect they may have on the tourist trade. The Council of the Isles have drafted new camping regulations, and the island police force is trying to stop beatniks from sleeping in fields, headlands, or in cars.
And now to the country and to the farm. Ross Salmon reports on activities from North Devon, Dartmoor, Alderney and Guernsey. But first, he takes up a story we reported just over a year ago.
It's the story of haylage, which is a brand new way of preserving summer grass for winter feed. It's a sort of a cross between hay and silage.
Hello, welcome to the first spotlight of 1964, which finds us on board HMS Ark Royal, which was anchored in Plymouth Sound after returning from the Far East.
I mean, have I been a beatnik? I was a beatnik before the word was invented, I suppose, you know. And they're lovely people.
Oh, it's fab, they're gorgeous, everything about it.
The Spotlight people are the people who live in the southwest peninsula and British territories across the water known as the Channel Islands. The Spotlight people are talking people.
The boat show gives one ideas, and I've had a thought that perhaps there's scope for a full southwest stand to show the thousands that come to Earl's Court just what the West Country ports and harbours have to offer in the way of boating and sailing and other water sports. From Earl's Court, back to Spotlight.
Did you know, Minister of Health, that there are many people in North Devon who've been waiting to have ordinary but still important operations for nearly 5.5 years?
Well, I certainly saw a newspaper report that this was the case in one area of the West Country. I know that there is a serious and urgent need for new hospital facilities in North Devon. There's no doubt about that. Nobody denies it.
Well, the doctors and surgeons at the North Devon Infirmary are very angry about this situation, and yet you haven't visited North Devon. Did you do this deliberately?
Oh, certainly not. I mean, it's quite impossible for me to visit every part of the southwest in a week.
Devon seems to have cornered the market when it comes to building replicas of famous old ships. Mayflower II, which reenacted the voyage of the Pilgrim Fathers, was built at Brixham about 10 years ago. Captain Cook's Endeavour, in which he made his famous voyages to the Pacific, was to have been built at Bideford, but the project fell through for financial reasons. But now, in Appledorf's oldest shipyard, a replica of the Nonsuch is being created. Nonsuch, 53 feet long and about 65 tons, made her famous voyage across the Atlantic about 300 years ago.
Well, here we are, Ross, Devon County Show 1967. Bigger and better than ever, they say, and they certainly click with the weather.
Marvellous, isn't it? I'm so delighted because a year's hard work has gone into this show, and goodness only knows what money they could lose in bad weather.
True. Well, let's see what it's like, shall we?
Sure.
Well, on paper, they're off to a good start, aren't they? Entries are up in all the main classes.
Yes, in fact, record entries in the cattle and the horse classes. But mind you, that doesn't mean quality's going to be any better, and that's what I want to check up on.
Well, I want to find out something about how a show like this is organised and the risks involved. You know, this is the first big agricultural show in the country since we applied to join the common market.
Yes.
I want to find out how the farmers think about that. What are you going to do first?
Well, it's not so interesting perhaps from the general public's point of view, but from the farmer's point of view, the show is all about livestock judging, and that's where I'm going, to the judging rings.
Well, fine. I'll see you back here later in the day.
Good.
Well, now I'd like you to meet one of the real old stagers of agriculture in Devon. Let me introduce Mr. Bill Stone, who's 76. He's been 58 years on one farm on the Perridge Estate near Exeter. Bill, now normally you get these awards after 40 years. Yours is 18 years overdue. Why is that?
Well, I never bothered, and I suppose I was a little bit on the shy side, and that was that.
What have you been doing all these years?
Well, milking cows and feeding pigs, riding ponies, and
you still do a full week, do you?
Well, not the full week. I work. I don't work on Saturday mornings, you see.
Hello, Ross. What did you think of it then?
Oh, Keith, well, in all sincerity, I think this is the best Devon County show I've ever been to because there is so much here of general interest, something for everybody.
True. Well, they need 50,000 people to cover their costs, so I hope they get the public support they want.
Well, Miss World coming on Saturday should draw the men away from the Cup final.
Well, they can see Miss World and the Cup final here. There'll be relay sets, television sets, all around the ground.
That's what I like about farmers. They get their priorities right.
They do, don't they?
So it rather looks as though Plymouth City Council have turned down a very profitable project. But in fact, it's not the corporation that have turned it down at all. They've never even heard of the possibility of buying the Golden Hind. It's the town clerk's department that said no. For according to the town clerk, Mr. Lloyd Jones, Plymouth is already shelving a number of worthwhile and expensive projects because of the credit squeeze, and they really just can't afford £18,000 for a frivolity like the Golden Hind.
Good evening. If you're a parent, do your children consider you a paper tiger? If you're a teacher, do your pupils tell you you're like a dog on a lead? Tonight we consider a book that the Minister of Education has been asked to ban, the Little Red School Book.
The date, March the 2nd. The place...
It still saddens me to think that the commercial exploitation of a natural resource should, in part... I'm sinking! Christ, sorry. Sorry, I'm going to have to move on firm ground. I'm sinking.
I'm on my way to Whitcomb Fair, like the man said. I've never been before. I've heard of it, of course. I mean, who hasn't? When everybody in Spotlight heard I was going to Whitcomb Fair, they thought it was very funny. I didn't. I've never been before. They think it's a bore. an annual ball, a traditional ball, they said. I don't, because I haven't been before. And I think if you're going to do something, you've got to do it properly. That's why I'm riding this grey mare, like Uncle Tom Copley and all that. We're going to Widdicombe Fair. Come on, Eddie.
Thank you, Sue. Yes, it's been very much a year of achievement for people in the Southwest, even though some of those people were only visiting. You may remember, for instance, that dear little lady who put the shark fishing enthusiasts at Loo to shame by winning her 2.5-hour battle to land the biggest shark ever seen in Britain.
This was a man-eater?
No, none at all. I knew it was a terrific thing because it was pulling so hard I thought I'd got the Loch Ness Monster on. Yes, it was a terrific fight.
Can you think of anything worse than yanking in a shark this size?
Yes, I think looking for another man at my time of life. Say it again, Reg, I always do.
New champion shark angler not so optimistic about her chances of landing a man. Art and culture also have their place in West Country achievement. In art, it was Mr. Robert Lenkiewicz who distinguished himself by his work on just one painting and his reasons for wanting to do it.
Well, I saw the wall. It's the sort of thing I enjoy doing, bigger the better. And it occurred to me that it wouldn't involve very much of a technical problem to do something fairly ambitious.
Culturally, this year, the laurels must surely go to a Porthleven Coast Guard, Mr. Leslie Vivian Mayo Martin. Already the holder of A-level successes in Italian and Spanish, Mr. Martin distinguished himself this year by adding Latin, Greek and ancient history to his spare time academic record.
Once you know there's something lacking or you're eager to get to know something, you'll go at it, you'll persevere. I think Cicero said that in his De Legibus.
Could you give us a quick burst of Latin now? What could you...
Or sunt lacrimae rerum et mentum mortalia tangunt. I think everybody knows this one. It's from book 1, I think line 464. There are tears for things, but the tears of mortals touch human hearts.
How true that is even today. I'm sure we all knew that one. It's only fair to point out, however, that 1971 wasn't all success and achievement. There were failures too, of course, and surely the most spectacular of them all was that of Mr. Henry Blythe. The famous hypnotist claimed that he could stop wars, no less.
Now you have heard my voice. You have heard my voice. And when I count 3, you will stop firing. 1, 2, 3, stop! Stop! Stop!
So Henry Blythe, alas, never got his chance to try it out on the North Vietnamese. I suppose another failure of 1971 was the gallant attempt by Mrs. Sheila Hardaway of Torquay to save the town's Pavilion Theatre, a building which, in her opinion, though not everybody's, is beautiful, but happens to keep bad company.
Well, you see, if you restored it, as we'd like to do, to its original setting, then you'd see what the pavilion really looks like. You are actually seeing public lavatories. I'm awfully sorry to have to say that, but you are.
Protesters like Mrs. Hardaway, people with a grievance or with a wrong they wanted righted, always made eager interviewees. But the opposite was also true, and people who suddenly stepped into staggering good fortune had very little to say.
Mr. Crocker, how does it feel now to be the owner of over £400,000?
Oh, wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And he never did say much more than that. But good fortune or bad, success or failure, the people of the Southwest demonstrated yet again this year their ability to smile through ill fortune and to adopt a philosophical attitude to life's little tribulations.
Take a look at the weather. It will feel noticeably warmer tomorrow with much lighter winds than recently. Thank goodness for that.
Well, now, of course, when you're in this situation, you never, alas, know exactly how long you're going to be in the drink. And so you are kitted out to survive as long as necessary. Now, this is a sea anchor, which will keep my back into wind and prevent the dinghy from turning over in rough weather. It's not too bad here today. It could be a lot rougher than this.
Now, you see, the basic trouble with Guernsey is that it has just too much sun. Last year they had about 2,000 hours. And while the tourist industry finds its fortune in such conditions, well, the natural, practical resources just dry up and wither away. Which is why in hotel... Excuse me, just 1 second, Ian. He's still there, good.
It'll stay dry in many places. In the east, temperatures not quite as high as today, but still on the warm side.
Opt out and cue Donald.
This is BBC One Southwest. Now Spotlight with Nationwide.
Opt in. 3 next.
15 seconds.
Coming to 3.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
out and
0.
Good evening. In Spotlight tonight, child cruelty. Magistrates are told they need more training
Coming
to
back
cope
to
with such
network.
cases.
10,
The penalties of
9,
illegal fishing
8,
dramatically
7,
reduced in an appeal court
6,
today.
5,
and Bernard Leach,
4,
the potter.
3,
we look back with him
2,
over his distinguished career.
Opt in.
And at 6:15, the pride of the tool makers. Must it lead to the fall of British Leyland? We follow the emergency debate as it proceeds in the House of Commons. We also analyse the effect on the rest of us and the threat that a million more people could be out of work if
10,
the final collapse
9,
comes. That's the Comments
8,
Crisis
7,
Guide nationwide.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Opt out and cue.
Well, first tonight, the Plymouth fire, and police in the city have begun a search for an arsonist after the fire earlier today in which a man died.
Frantic Cakey.
Detective Chief Superintendent Provan
5,
Sharp, head of Devon
4,
County CID,
3,
says he's
2,
certain the fire was
1,
started deliberately
film.
by an intruder.
On film.
Cue.
The fire took over an hour to bring under control. Outside the building, a yacht valued at £14,000 was completely destroyed, and 3 others slightly damaged. Police have set up a special incident room for the investigation.
2, 1.
An appeal court today reduced the fines on 2 Danish trawler skippers who'd been caught fishing inside Britain's 12-mile limit. Last week, magistrates had ordered them to pay a total of £22,000 in fines. But today, on appeal, that was reduced to just £2,500 each. Here's Keith Blackler.
Cue and cut.
The 2 Danish boats were fishing 18 miles from the Devon coast, but they were close to the Eddystone Rock, and that is officially an offshore island with a 12-mile limit of its own. The judge said it was something of a special case, and the skippers, who were in the English Channel for the first time, said they hadn't realised.
Today, Britain's 260,000 livestock farms are once again under threat from one of the most serious animal diseases in the world, foot and mouth. Samples from 6 suspect cattle in Jersey were sent to the Animal Virus Research Institute in Surrey, and late yesterday afternoon, the institute confirmed the fears of Jersey's farming community.
Well, Jersey's in a state of strict quarantine today as veterinary surgeons and Ministry of Agriculture experts battle to contain the disease, which has so far led to the slaughter of 6 cows and a bull on the island. Luckily, the cows affected were in an isolated field away from the road. Their carcasses have now been buried 15 feet under lime and the field ploughed over. The island's vets are now hoping that the rest of the 7,000 cattle on Jersey can be saved. On Jersey, farms are being isolated with gates barred, lime on the roads and disinfectant on hand for essential visitors' boots. Farmers are under strict orders to report sick livestock and farm animals have been brought indoors. Reporter John Wormsley asked one Jersey farmer how long he expected to have his cattle indoors.
Not too long, I hope, but there's every possibility it could be 3 weeks.
What will that mean to you?
Well, a lot more work. Because obviously normally they would drink by themselves out in the field, and every day they're going to have to be watered. And a lot more expense because it costs more to feed them indoors than it does to feed them on grass outside.
Well, what exactly happened in the dark and stormy seas on Saturday night and how the lifeboat Solomon Brown came to grief are now the subject of inquiries and investigations.
as the tributes to the Penley lifeboat crew continue, we end with a special tribute from a singer who knows well the dangers faced by all lifeboat crews. Brenda Wotton, who lives just along the coast from Marslip Penzance, recorded an album last year which included a song dedicated to the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. It's a song that reflects the unspoken fears of every lifeboatman's family, a song that recognises that whatever tragedy strikes, there will always be others waiting to make sure the traditions of the lifeboat service continue.
This is BBC One Southwest, and now at 6:35, Chris Denham and Sue King with Spotlight.
A bishop's blessing for the Cornish tin miners who will petition Parliament tomorrow.
Armed farmers use a new law to hunt a killer dog loose in Cornwall.
And paddling his own canoe, the whitewater champion on the way to a record.
Good evening. The Bishop of Truro today gave his blessing to the Cornish miners on the eve of their Tinners' March in London. Throughout the tin crisis, the Church has been firmly behind the miners in their fight for government help. And at Givor Tin Mine this afternoon, he left the miners in no doubt where his sympathies lay.
The visit to Givor was one of a regular series of pastoral visits which a bishop makes within his diocese, but the deepening tin crisis gave an extra significance to the bishop's presence at the mine this afternoon.
The Water Authority also announced that all but 3 of the region's major reservoirs are now full following record rainfall last month. And in Plymouth, the improvements at the Plympton sewage works have been completed a month ahead of schedule, reducing the notorious Plympton Pong to an acceptable level.
Right, weather time now, and a man who's been haunting my life these many years. Tonight, I think I'll give him a miss.
Absolutely wonderful. Chris Denham scoring an own goal there. Let's hope that happens at Hereford and Plymouth Argyle win the replay. Well, we've got a low some 200 miles west-southwest of Ireland. That's moving east, and it's going to bring unsettled and rather windy weather to all parts of the region. So if we have a look at tonight, it's going to be fairly cloudy in western parts in Cornwall, but there'll be clear spells in Devon and Somerset and Dorset. Temperatures there dropping to 6 centigrade. That's 43 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll get fog over the hills in all parts of the region, particularly in the west, so Brown Willie will get some there. It'll be milder in the west and maybe a few spots of rain coming along later as well. But it is going to be a windy night. That's what we've got to talk about. Southeasterly winds picking up, getting up strong, perhaps gale force on the headlands in the west here, like Lizard Point, perhaps force 7 on some of the headlands in the east. Berryhead tends to feed it with these sort of southeasters. Visibly in the coastal waters, moderate to good, and I should say that there is fog already down in the Channel Islands, going to remain misty and foggy all night down there.
Sorry about that. All day long we've been trying to keep that a secret. That was truly wonderful. The hardest part of the entire day, that was keeping that one a secret, and thanks to the Hulkogram, if he had any decency whatsoever, he'd come dashing back into the studio and take this one with him as well.
I knew nothing about it. What do you mean trying to keep it a secret? It frightened me.
I thought you were in the secret.
No, I knew nothing about it, mate.
All the way through the film, she was saying, "Oh, I wouldn't mind being Hulkogrammed by somebody as big as that." Well, now see what happens, and we'll probably report back to you this time tomorrow night. Hope you can join us then. Until then, to all of you, from all of us, you're back. Good night.
Oh, you frightened me. I knew nothing about it. Nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with
Now we come to your views on our new look and sound, and we have to admit the verdict was not favourable. In fact, the letters were 10-1 against our set.
It's appalling.
2 figures on a grey battleship. Grey and indistinct.
Dark, gloomy and uninviting.
A mystery brain disease affecting dairy cattle has been discovered in Devon and Cornwall. So far, agricultural experts stress that the disease, known as BSE, is too isolated to cause grave concern, but they're worried by an illness for which they have no cure and which results in certain slaughter for affected animals. The disease is not infectious, but has already claimed 100 cattle.
The disease makes walking almost impossible for affected cattle. Back legs are splayed apart. Sudden noise or even gentle prodding by farm workers often results in an angry reaction from cows who are normally placid and easy to handle.
But perhaps we can clarify the situation still further.
Well, yes, I, Chris, am sitting in for Chris with Sue.
When Chris wasn't here, I sat in for both Chris's and worked with Sue.
Well, today she's not here, so Bill's sitting in for her, although earlier he sat in for me.
But next week, Sue's back, so she'll be working with Chris again, who's sitting in for Chris.
Confused? You will be by the next edition of Backchat.
Good evening. Urgent talks have been taking place at an Exeter bank this afternoon over the future of the Brixham and Torbay Fish Cooperative. The marketing organisation on which most of Brixham's fishermen depend is in deep financial trouble.
BBC One South West, and now at 6:35, Christopher Slade and Jill Dando with Spotlight.
The Exeter hotel murder. Was Clyde Biddulph warned not to come back to Devon?
A room with a view. Plymouth pensioners slam a concrete monstrosity.
And a flying lesson. Cornish schoolchildren send learning sky high.
Good evening. Detective.
She likes documentaries and current affairs mostly, I think.
Good evening.
They bark a bit like that in the newsroom, you know. It adds a whole new complexion to going down a storm, really, doesn't it?
Well, there's certainly no bone of contention there.
Yeah, but you would have thought that the dog would prefer something classical, perhaps like bark.
Oh.
I've had enough.
Writes Mick Roberts of Exeter.
Every evening as the Spotlight news comes on, the opening titles have finished, the studio lights go up, and we see the two presenters looking at each other like two inane statues.
Stella Palfreman of Tiverton has another suggestion.
Are Christopher Slade and Juliet Morris deeply in love with each other? If not, why do they sit gazing into each other's eyes?
Well, I can assure you that the studio is not the most conducive atmosphere in which to embark on a passionate love affair, as you can see here. But we're going in for a new look Spotlight in the autumn, so then we'll take all your views into consideration.
Although Craig is the doyen of weathermen and a firm favourite with the public, he might have acknowledged that September is the first month of autumn.
But he's not here at the moment. Well, we're happy to put the record straight, and as that makes this the first Backchat of autumn, let's finish by taking a look back at a summer few of us are sorry to see the last of.
Into each life some rain must fall, but too much is falling in mine. Into each heart some tears must fall, but someday the sun will shine.
The men and women who take part in this sport like things to be tough. In fact...
But when I think of you, another shower starts. Into each life some rain must fall, but too much is falling in mine.
Some lighter, if rather damp moments from another glorious summer.
Oh, yes, we've all got the suntans to prove it, haven't we?
We have. No, it's rust.
Dear Backchat, please, could we see again that outstanding report by John Francis?
Dear Backchat, please, oh please bring back Donald Hayway. He's such a mature performer.
Dear Backchat, whatever happened to that nice Chris Denham?
And now Spotlight's news update for the South West and the Channel Islands. Good evening. Coachloads of people from the South West joined a national lobby at Westminster today to tell MPs of their opposition to the privatisation of water. They said that public opinion was overwhelmingly against the sell-off.
The more of us that take the opportunity to impress on your own local MP how strongly you feel
then, I mean, even some Conservative MPs might actually vote the way their constituents want in the House when the bill comes into the House, and, you know, their consciences might be pricked.
RAF Mountbatten in Plymouth is to close in 5 years' time. The School of Combat Survival and Rescue will go to Wales and the Met Office to the city centre. The announcement that trading in tin is to be resumed on the London Metal Exchange has been greeted with cautious optimism by Cornish tin producers. When the market collapsed 4 years ago, hundreds of jobs were lost and the price of tin was less than the cost of producing it. Now demand has almost doubled the price and it's hoped jobs will be secure. And football, Torquay United lost the area final of the Sherpa Van Trophy against Wolves by 1-2. Junior Education Minister Angela Rumbold, on a visit to Cornish primary schools today, said the county had been given a good share of money to look after the buildings, many of which are dilapidated. But Education Committee Chairman Peter Cox, who's pressing for more funds, disagreed.
We do need a very large input of money. We've got to conform with the regulations, we're told, by 1991. To do so would need at least £100 million, including the replacements, the secondary school split sites. We do need a vast injection of money.
And now a look at the region's weather. Tonight will stay generally clear with temperatures falling to 1 Celsius. Tomorrow, sunny spells with scattered showers, temperatures 11 Celsius, winds light to moderate northwesterly.
Now a special edition of Spotlight with Chris Rogers at the Tall Ships and in the studio, Valerie Sanderson.
Jailed for life. The man accused of murdering a university professor and his lover is found guilty at Exeter Crown Court. The government is told of Cornwall's long-term fears following the winter storms. And on the eve of the Tall Ships race, we report live from race headquarters in Plymouth.
Yes, good evening and welcome to Queen Anne's Battery in Plymouth, the home of the 1990 Cutty Sark Tall Ships race. From here, tomorrow, 72 ships will leave under sail on the first leg of the race to La Corona in northern Spain. Their crews are young people from 20 nations. The idea is to foster international friendship. Well, the weather has been fine here today, but as you can see, it is slightly closing in at the moment. But more of that and about the race later in the programme. For now, back to the studio with Val and today's local news. Val.
Good evening. The week-long murder trial of an Exeter man accused of burning to death his former lover and her new partner ended today with 2 life sentences for the accused John Crawshaw. The jury rejected manslaughter options argued by the defence for what the judge
This is BBC One South West, and now Spotlight with Teresa Driscoll and Martin Tasker.
A Devonport union man defies his national officers to battle for local jobs.
Another jobs blow for North Devon. Factory bosses blame the building slump.
And is public transport off the rails?
Good evening. A prominent Devonport union official has defied his national executive over a campaign to keep Rosyth Dockyard open.
The companies running the 2 dockyards have said they'd be happy to see both yards stay open. However, Babcock Thorne's solution is to give Trident and the rest of the nuclear refit work to Rosyth, with some surface ships coming to Devonport. DML say the reverse is true, and the greatest efficiencies could be made by keeping the nuclear refit work along with most of the surface fleet refits in Plymouth and giving some ship repair work to Rosyth.
Sally Mountjoy there, and still on defence, members of the elite Special Boat Squadron have made a direct appeal to Downing Street in a last-ditch attempt to save Portland Naval Base from closure. The government is expected to announce that the base will shut with the loss of up to 1,400 jobs.
Portland couldn't be facing a bleaker future.
Already 800 jobs are to go from civilian establishments as pressure mounts for reductions in defence spending. Now the Cold War has been consigned to the history books.
Now, it doesn't take a mathematician to work out that if a rugby team has lost 3 matches out of 3, they're struggling. This weekend, Plymouth Albion have the chance to reverse that trend when they take on another lower-placed team at home. With the sports news, here's Carol Madge.
Good evening. Plymouth Albion take on Askians in a vital home tie tomorrow at Beacon Park. Albion are next to bottom in Division 3, with Askians just 1 place above them. With the bottom 8 sides facing relegation, the division's becoming fiercely competitive, and both sides are desperate for a win.
It's a record that no coach would envy. Albion have yet to win a point in the league this year, and one of the worst blows was losing at home to their Cornish rivals Red Ruth.
Well, the cold weather signals the move for some sports from outdoor venues to the clement surroundings of sports halls. The winter indoor series of tennis tournaments begins in earnest this weekend with the Volkswagen National Championships, and 2 South West players, Andrew Castle and Sarah Gomer, are both seeded. Sarah Gomer from Torquay reached the final of the Nationals last year, losing to Jo Jury, so she'll be anxious for revenge this year.
Now, still to come in Spotlight tonight. All the thrills and spills as the World Championships come to the southwest.
And a red tape nightmare.
Apparently I could put 25 pigs in here and stink the village out and that would be all right. But because I've planted trees and flowers and got a few ducks, I've broken the law.
First time for the sport now on what's been an extremely busy weekend, especially for Plymouth Argyle fans. If you didn't know, the Pilgrims won their Division 3 playoff finals against Darlington 1-0 on Saturday, and Natalie was there.
Of course, yes, I was. It was a marvellous weekend, and congratulations again to Plymouth, who are now contemplating their future as a second division team. The players and management are all enjoying a welcome break before it all starts again in August. Of course, there was plenty of other sport this weekend, so let's start with cricket. Somerset have made one of their best ever starts to their county championship campaign. They're just 2 points off the top of the table.
And tonight's headlines. The government's considering charging tolls for using motorways. Labour says it's unfair that motorists should be penalised. And more thunderstorms are predicted for the southwest tonight. Last night, storms cut power to homes across the region, and 2 cottages caught fire after being hit by lightning.
Well, that's it from us for tonight. If we're spared, we'll join you tomorrow. Don't worry too much about the storms, because weather forecasters have been known just ever so occasionally
How could you say that,
to get
Russell?
things just ever so slightly wrong. So keep smiling. See you tomorrow. Good night.
Good night.
This is BBC One Southwest. And now Spotlight with Teresa Driscoll and Russell Labby.
The Conservatives win Plymouth and Torbay. Have they turned the corner?
Out in the cold, Labour shocked by the scale of the defeat.
And a hunting ban. The government's inquiry reveals how many jobs are at stake.
Hello and welcome to Spotlight.
Yes, good evening. Also tonight, campaigners fighting to stop a quarry firm diverting a river are claiming victory. The company says the plan is shelved for at least 5 years.
In the sport tonight, Torquay United takes centre stage with their final bid for the playoffs. All the rugby as well, and the jockey from Columpton, who's hoping to beat the rest of the country and bring a national title back to the southwest.
South West Tories are celebrating a stunning set of election results which surpassed even their most optimistic predictions. They snatched Torbay from the Lib Dems and made gains in Dorset and Cornwall. But it was their victory in Plymouth, a traditional Labour stronghold, which caught everyone by surprise and has raised Tory hopes of a general election comeback. Samantha Smith reports.
A hero's welcome for William Hague in the place they're once again calling Tory Bay.
Well, I promise you we'll win Torbay. I didn't know you were going to.
Russ.
Thanks, Natalie. Well, hot cross buns are now well past their sell-by date, aren't they? But age hasn't deterred one Devon man. He's just paid over £100 for a bun baked back in 1828.
It's believed to be the oldest surviving bun in the world. As Andy Breer reports, it's hoped the piece of baking history will become the star attraction at its new home.
Bill Foster is into nostalgia in a big way. His baker's delivery van is a replica 1928 Model A Ford. And although the bread and buns at his shop in Tavistock are all fresh, the decor is from a bygone era. So when Bill heard that what's thought to be the oldest hot cross bun in the world was coming up for auction, he had to have it.
I phoned the chap who was selling it. He said, I'm not selling it until it's the NEC in the end of April. I said, well, are you interested in selling it before? And he said, if a baker was interested, I would be. I said, well, I'm Bill the baker, so I'm bound to be interested.
And this is what all the fuss is about. Probably the most expensive hot cross bun you'll ever get your hands on. Doesn't look very appetising, but then again, it is 172 years old. There's a bit of woodworm damage on the top, and if you turn it over, it says, a cross bun baked at the Stepney Bun House on Good Friday, 1828. For some, paying £155 for a hot cross bun may be a little hard to swallow, as indeed would the bun be if you tried to eat it. But for Bill, it's priceless.
It isn't a hot cross bun, really. It's a bit of history I bought, really. But so I'm quite pleased with it. It's got a few woodworm holes in it, and there's teeth marks in it from mice or rats, or probably in somebody's attic. Who knows?
Yes, bun mad, isn't it? Well, we've had the decorators in over the weekend.
Just a bit.
Splashed a bit of magnolia around. Hope you like it, and you look very at home in your new surroundings.
I've got my own plinth now.
Oh, marvellous.
I'm very proud of that. Not too proud of the weather, though, because it's still got a thundery feel to it. A lot of cloud around as well. That's the Atlantic chart at the moment. You can see massive clouds still over the Iberian Peninsula there. And indeed, if we look at the thunderstorms, that's going a bit closer, 4 o'clock this afternoon. A lot of clouds just there now. A couple of feet clean on the north coast, but the south coast absolutely flat. On then to the times of high water. Bideford 10:31 and 10:53. Plymouth 10:31 and 10:45. The outlook then? Well, still the chance of some thundery showers, still humid on Wednesday and Thursday, getting fresher on Friday and Saturday with less chance of a shower. Our other picture this evening from Amanda Phippen. She's 5 of Plymouth. Thanks very much indeed, Amanda. Well done. Teresa.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, that's just about it from Spotlight in our new home, but we leave you tonight as those thunder clouds gather with a look back at some of the weekend's sunshine and to the highlights of Flora Day in Helston. From the team, have a lovely evening. Hope to see you tomorrow.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Now, it's a very special day today because on this day, half a century ago, BBC Television in the Southwest started broadcasting from this building here in Seymour Road in Plymouth. And for this special 50th anniversary programme, we're joined by some very distinguished guests.
Yes, it's our real privilege to welcome back to the studio tonight Sheila Tracy, one of the earliest compares, as they were called then, and Joe Pengelly, who through his career read the news, reported for the programme and announced the programmes as well. Thank you so much for coming in. It's a real pleasure to meet you both.
Thank you for having us.
And of course the big reunion today. What was it like meeting up with old colleagues and reminiscing?
Oh, that was fantastic, but just hearing my voice at the start of the programme, I thought my voice has changed a bit, not to mention the face.
It was like that back then though, wasn't it, Joe? Everyone had that very clipped
very much so,
delivery.
yes. What was rather depressing about today was how famous some of our predecessors have become. I'm still here in Plymouth and they're worldwide.
And we're very glad that you are. We're going to talk more with you in a moment, both of you. Thank you for being with us on the sofa today. Well, to help us remember the events of 50 years ago, Sheila Tracy and Joe Pengelly. And Sheila, we've seen lots of archive film of you right at the beginning. I think it was 62, your first broadcast.
63,
Southwest.
February 63.
Right, Southwest at 6.
Yes.
And we see you opening a book at the start of the programme. What was that all about?
I haven't a clue what that book was. Have a prop, you know.
So we join you putting a book to one side and welcoming viewers.
Yes, yeah. But I used to drive down, you know, from my home in Surrey and get here in time for the meeting. 2:30, 3 o'clock. Yes. And because I had a late hair appointment one day, because I used to get my hair done downtown, you see, and I arrived late. And I knew I was going to be late. I let them know. I came in, and Donald Carroll was the news editor that night, said, "We've got Earl Jellicoe, the First Lord of the Admiralty, in tonight. Don't worry," he said, "don't worry. I've got the questions for you." And I always did my own research for an interview. Yes. But he said, "Don't worry." No, he said, "Just don't ask him that one marked with an asterisk on transmission until you get to transmission." And of course I did, and just as well it wasn't colour, because he went purple. And he said, "Where did you get your information from?"
Oh my
now, if he had stopped, that would have been the end of my television career. But he didn't, thank God. He just went steaming straight on. And of course, repercussions went through Whitehall and
oh my goodness.
Southwest at 6.
It's been wonderful to listen to all the stories today, at the reunion especially. Joe, lots of people asked Justin and I how we got into television. How did you get into television?
Well, I sang on television. I was invited to sing, and then I saw the magic of it all, and it quite fascinated me. I was in a dull office job, and I thought, this is the place to be. And it's been like that for the last 50 years.
And what are your best memories, the most memorable moments?
Well, the most memorable one, I used to read the news, and I'd be sitting here with my scripts in front of me, and I'd be reading away, trying to work to the camera, trying to watch the monitor, trying to watch the cue lights, the studio manager. Then out of the corner of my eye, I would see a figure crawling across the floor of the studio, a Mr. John Tanton, an enfant terrible of the BBC in the Southwest. He would come up and just out of shot would extract a news item that I hadn't yet read and would insert one that I hadn't read. This is where you become schizophrenic, because you're worried. You know, it's a matter of taste. Are you going to present the right sort of presentation? And you could very well come up and say, 36 people were drowned, and you realise, you know, you've made an error of taste. This is the worst thing that can happen.
Very briefly, Joe, we're surrounded by memorabilia today, and something that will be of very quickly familiar to viewers is this globe that used to introduce the start of programmes. It's just a magical mechanical box, which was then turned into this. Joe, would you do the honours for us?
This is BBC One.
Wonderful. He hasn't lost it at all. Joe, Sheila, we'll talk more in a moment. It's been lovely to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. Now, over the last 50 years of bringing you the best news and features in the Southwest, a huge archive of film and videotape has been created.
Yes, much of it has been stored and is now being made available for future generations. David George has been looking back at the very oldest films in our storeroom.
BBC television in the Southwest.
Hello, everyone.
This is BBC Southwest's film archive containing our very oldest material. Unfortunately, everything from the first 18 months of broadcasting from Plymouth was destroyed years ago. So our very oldest film is this one, which goes back 49 years to the summer of 1962. It's the Queen in Plymouth to open the Civic Centre. People came for miles to see the newly built skyscraper. "50 years later, and this whole building, the whole Civic Centre, is listed and for sale. The next stop on our tour of the oldest of our archives is a story from Falmouth Docks.
Of the 2,500 men who work at this dockyard, almost half, 1,200, are today out of work. But the companies say they've done better than yards elsewhere. They've even quoted uneconomic prices to get ships in. But still, unemployment has been growing. It's going to mean a grim Christmas on unemployment pay for dockyard workers here at Falmouth. And the chances of them getting back into the dockyard in the near future are very slim.
Mike Penrose standing here almost 50 years ago. Today the docks employ 450 workers and they've got multi-million-pound contracts for ship repair and fitting out. Look at that, an empty street. Those were the days. One of the features of early broadcasts from Plymouth were a series of films about southwest towns and cities by the artist and documentary maker Michael Canning and his old Citroen. Here he is in Torrington. Where's he off to? We never did find out. Storms, the sea, fishing boats and harbours have often featured. Robin Turner is the acting operator of the Newlyn tide gauge. So the waves going over.
Wonderful, and it still happens to this day.
Our oldest films include the curiosity that was and still is the Newlyn Tidal Observatory and its former operator, Mr. Joe Hutchings. What's the value of that film for you?
I saw things there that brought back memories. I mean, the guy I haven't seen obviously for years because dear old Joe passed away a long time ago, and it's a face that suddenly came back from almost my childhood, which was quite, you know, it jumps out of the screen at you.
But when it comes to collecting a sample of seawater to check its density, there's nothing so simple as a bucket and a length of rope. Mr. Hutchings, I always thought the tides were as regular as sunrise and sunset.
Some things haven't changed a bit.
Run, Telecine. 5, 4, 2.
You like dancing it?
Oh yes, very much.
Is this better than twisting?
Yes, it's much easier.
Much easier?
Yes.
In Bideford, they were demonstrating the latest dance craze, the lays.
You tried it out at school yet?
Not very much.
You don't think it might catch on then?
It might.
It didn't. David George, BBC Television Southwest, in the 1960s.
Lots of very happy memories, and we have with us Joe Pengelly and Sheila Tracy. And Sheila, as you're here, we're going to put you to work, if you wouldn't mind.
Right, I'm very willing. We never had a weather forecaster in the studio when I did Southwest at 6. So it's a great delight to hand over to David, who this evening is joined by somebody very special, the very first regional weather forecaster.
Thank you, Sheila. Yes, good evening to you. I'm joined by the legend, which is Craig Rich. You started back on the 4th of December 1978, and as Sheila was saying, the first ever regional weatherman. How did that happen?
Purely by chance, David. I was teaching at the Polytechnic at the time, and I presented a paper on shipping, controversial paper I might add, in Brussels to what was then the EEC. When I came back, I got hauled into Spotlight to be interviewed by Hugh Scully about this particular paper, and in the green room afterwards, Hugh and I were having a drink, and he looked at my CV. He said, "You taught navigation and meteorology, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, I did it one time." He said, "We've been thinking about getting somebody to do the weather. Would you do it?" No. I was euphoric because I'd been in this interview, and you know what it's like the first time you come in. Absolute euphoria to be released. I would have done anything for anybody. I said, "Yes, I'll do that." So I went home and said to my wife, I said to Pat, Hugh Scully said, "Maybe I should do the weather for Spotlight." She said, "Don't be so daft." 6 weeks later, I was standing here doing it, and the paint was still wet on the board.
Did you ever regret doing that, coming in and doing the weather?
Well, frankly, it was a life-changing thing, really. Yeah. So for 25 years, things changed completely. But I enjoyed every minute of it. I had a fantastic time here, and I'll never forget it. I hope you do 25 years as well.
Well, I hope to, yes. I still get letters from people asking where you are, and they also say to me, you know, the weather was so much better when Craig was doing it.
No, not at all. Not at all. Look at the weather you got here now. Fantastic,
Beautiful, isn't it? Anyway, I better go on with the forecast. Thank you very much, Craig, for joining us. Cheers. Well, good evening to you. Yes, we've had some lovely weather today. We've had plenty of sunshine and some pretty good temperatures as well. We had 22, 23 degrees today, and that's fairly good for April. Our April temperatures are normally around 12 to 14 degrees. We've got some more fine weather to enjoy for tomorrow. In fact, for the rest of this week, it is a mainly dry story, but there is a bit of a fly in the ointment. There's a chance of a few showers turning up. Now, not tomorrow, but they will perhaps begin to appear as we move from tomorrow night and into Friday. There's a risk of 1 or 2 showers developing. It's the warm air, a bit more moisture, triggering 1 or 2 sharp showers. Most of us, though, still dry and still relatively warm. Here's the outlook right through and including Easter. Temperatures down a little bit as we move towards the weekend, and Friday's the day we're watching quite carefully because there is the risk of those showers on Friday. They'll be fairly isolated, most of us dry, a little bit cooler because of it, and slightly more of a breeze, a southeasterly breeze picking up. Saturday and Sunday, both days should be fine and dry with some pleasant sunshine to enjoy, but the temperatures are going to come down. 21 or 22, that's still way above average. 22 is 72 degrees in Fahrenheit. Have a good evening, and I'll hand you back to Justin and Victoria.
Thank you very much indeed, David. And of course, we'll have more memories of the last 50 years over the next few weeks. And of course, we'd like to hear from you as well, because you have supported Spotlight over the last 50 years. What are your earliest memories of the programme, the stories, the presenters? Email us at spotlight@bbc.co.uk or write to us at BBC Spotlight here in Plymouth.
What do you think, Craig? Is he getting the hang of it?
I think he's doing pretty well for a boy.
Another 20 years. Sheila, thank you very much indeed. We've had a wonderful day. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Thank you for joining us over the last 50 years and tonight. From all of us on Spotlight, good night.
Good night.
Good night. You don't have to wait.